Hey, everybody. Welcome to the second episode of the Pick is In podcast with me, your fantasy girl from Sports Cafe and Kristin. Real quick, just a reminder, our code is still out there for Manscaped. So this Pick is In podcast is presented by Manscaped. Use code SC2020 at manscaped.com. You get 20% off your purchase and free shipping. It's great stuff. I've heard really good things from the guys. And the boxers, I'm telling you, I'm still in love with the boxers. I snuggle them every night. So anyways, I'm really excited to have my two guests tonight. We have Josh and Jonah from JJ Talks podcast. We got Josh, the Prince of Hilaire, and Jonah. So thanks, guys, for coming on. How are you today?
We're doing pretty good. Thank you for having us.
Oh yeah, it's great.
Thanks.
I'm really enjoying this group of fantasy people that we've gotten to connected on Twitter here. So if you follow any of us on Twitter and everything, you'll get on this group. And you're both Atlanta Falcon fans, is what you had told me, right?
Begrudgingly, yeah.
I am a Browns fan. So, I have no room to talk about any fandom there. We always believe this year is going to be our year, or next year is always going to be our year. So let's get into it. I have a couple of topics for you guys I wanted to go over on your fantasy guys here. Who is the one guy that you are targeting that you have to have if he gets picked? It doesn't have to be your first round guy, but a guy you're looking at in this draft that you really, really are targeting that you can see just, I don't know, you just have to have it. It gets picked above you. You're going to be really upset about it.
I'm honestly targeting Robert Woods in all my drafts. I love him. He's going criminally low. He always goes low, and he did start off slow last year, but after the bye week and after they switched to the two tight end set, he was the number one target in that offense. And unlike Tyler Higbee, who he was splitting touches with Everett before he went down, he took over that spot from Kupp, and Kupp is still a good red zone threat, but Woods is the clear runaway number one. And I still think that we're going to see that going into this season just because of during the whole draft and during the whole offseason, they didn't address the O-line at all. And it seems like Higbee and Everett are still there, still good to go. So I fully expect Woods to have wide receiver one value this season. And you can get him in the fourth round, and depending on what you draft you're in, sometimes fifth.
Hi, guys. I wanted to butt in just for a second. Josh, you're exactly right. I've been trying to covet Robert Woods in all my drafts, and I actually did in my my first one last Saturday. Robert Woods is my wide receiver 2 below Julio Jones. So I got Julio Jones and Robert Woods is my wide receivers this year going to fantasy. So I just have to say that. So enjoy, guys. I'll see you later.
No, thank you for chiming in. No, I'm really liking Robert Woods. The only thing that does scare me is that offensive line, and I don't know how well Jared Goff has just been regressing. So, but I think for Woods, he's a clear-cut receiver on there. So that's a good one because he is going pretty low in his wide receiver ranking there. Jonah, who's your guy you must have? We have a delay, I guess, on Jonah here. All right. Well, I will tell you guys the guy I must have, and I'm not even being a homer here. I am with Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt is going running back. Oh, there you go, Jonah. Come on in.
Hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
He's on that college town Wi-Fi.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll go on with this Kareem Hunt. He's running back 28 right now. I'm seeing him draft 76. He had 19 games, or he's running back 19, and he only played in 8 games last season. So, I know he's playing behind Nick Chubb, but he's going to see more of those catches out of the backfield from Baker. He's going to see a lot of those red zone looks. I actually think Chubb is going to regress a little bit because Kareem Hunt being there. I think it's going to be that more 1-2-headed monster than running back 1, running back 2. So I think that he is going to have a super high value where you can get him. So Kareem Hunt's one of my guys. Now, staying on the running back thing, I wanted to get your opinion on this. Jonathan Taylor, I'm thinking of him as one of my must-have guys, but I just think that Marlon Mack and him, the same kind of thing with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. But what is your thoughts on Jonathan Taylor as being a must-have, or with the rookie, it could be a little bit iffy?
I'm leaning toward the must-have, but God, it's so hard just because we know that right off the bat they're going to be splitting carries, right? So the strategy that I've been trying to do, if I've already had a draft completed, I'm already targeting Taylor immediately. And I fully expect after week 1 or week 2, there still will be questions about it, and I'll be looking to trade for him. As far as the draft goes, I mean, you never really know what's going to happen, if you get him at the right price. Like, if I'm personally in the draft right now and I get him somewhere in the 5th round, I guess, I'll take a shot on him. But I'm looking to take other receivers, other running backs at that time. And I do want him on my team. It's just I want to get him at his lowest value.
Absolutely. It's just surprising to me because he's right now ranked as running back 19 on fantasypros.com. I was surprised because Todd Gurley is running back 16, and that's over Jonathan Taylor, who I know is a rookie, and James Conner, who is running back. He's below him too. So I don't know why Todd Gurley, as a Falcons fan here, can you give me a little scoop into why Todd Gurley? Because I just think with all his injuries and like his performance over the last couple of years, it's been rough with him. Why is he ranked so much higher than like James Conner, who's been a great running back 1?
Well, the answer to that is just name value and just the fact that he was number 1 for 2 seasons, really. Because, he had his rookie season and he was pretty good then. And I mean, even last year, he was still right because he got double-digit touchdowns anyways behind one of the worst lines and being on kind of a timeshare because it completely took him out of the passing game in general. But I'm not high on him. He's going way too high for me. He's in the Falcons offense with really he's in a Dirk Cutter offense, which is what I'm more afraid of. So not only does he have a Dirk Cutter offense, he also has one of the worst O-lines in the league. I mean, I hate admitting that because it's just like a year in, year out thing for Falcons. Is that we have terrible defenses, we have terrible O-line play. We just have to rely on Matt Ryan and Julio just throwing it like, can we curse on this? A shit ton.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So I think ever since Cutter has been our offensive coordinator, we've averaged 600 plus pass attempts every season, and that's not the kind of ingredients you would want for your running back going in the 3rd round. I get he has the pass catching ability, and Dirk Cutter already came out to ESPN and said, hey, we want to give him a minimum of 15 touches. And it's like, cool, but that's coach speak, and I'm not falling for that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm almost wondering if he can stay healthy. You say that offensive line, is really depleted and everything. And Chip, our other co-host on the Sports Cafe, he's a big Falcons fan, and I hear this every week. Just like how
I love it, Chip.
I just think how mismanaged this team is because there's so much talent there. Moving Vic Beasley around, and Julio can't get in the end zone, and it's been really tough. I imagine as a Falcons fan, after that Super Bowl, things have not been right. But I don't even know if Gurley's going to stay healthy the whole season. He's one of the guys I will not draft. I don't even care if he's there like pretty low. I'm just going to stay away from Todd Gurley, which brings me to my next question. Who is the guy that you just won't draft? This guy's disappointed you a lot, or you just don't believe in him, or you just think who's this guy you're completely staying away from?
Well, okay, it's good that you bring it up now because Todd Gurley was one of those ones I had in contention. But if I'm going off of, it's really a lot of those running backs in that 3rd and 4th round range. I mean, you've got Todd Gurley, you got Melvin Gordon, and even David Johnson himself. But the one who I think is actually getting picked up a lot up is Le'Veon Bell. And just it seems like every day there's another news coming out. It's like Adam Gase does not like him. Hey, we have Frank Gore. Oh, hey, that running back that we got from Miami, right? Kalen Ballage. Yeah, we want that guy. Hell no. I have stayed away from any Jets that are not named Jamieson Crowder or Chris Herndon, just in general. I mean, we've already seen it with Kenyon Drake whenever Gase had that control of that Miami offense. I mean, they spent a good enough draft pick on him, and it's like, hey, you know what? After Ajayi went down, he was pretty good. And then coming to the next season, it was, hey, can Drake maybe come out and be a above average running back? Can it be RB2 or even RB1? And they were like, no, we got an ancient Frank Gore here, timeshare. And then you saw as soon as Kenyon Drake got away from Miami, and I know Adam Gase was with Miami last year, but as soon as he got away from Miami and that staff, it's, wow, Kenyon Drake is really good. And now you have Le'Veon, who's already had problems with Gase before, with the whole issues of did he have a hamstring issue or not? And he's like, no, I didn't. I kind of actually want to do something instead of just standing around the sidelines. And this was just the other day. And you already have the Frank Gore being added, Kalen Ballage being added, and they went and drafted a running back late in the draft. Immediate, I am not touching Le'Veon anywhere. None of my drafts, none of my leagues.
That's I really like that because he screwed me the year he sat out. I picked him and then he never played and really. So I kind of have a little hate in my heart for Le'Veon, and he is on the downside. Another guy like that who was a number one receiver as he was the number one running back, Odell Beckham Jr. I have had him the last 2 years. Oh God! And again, as a Browns fan, I'm sticking with our Browns here, and I have had him the last 2 years, and he has just been abysmal. And now I say that I'm going to stay away from him. Watch Baker and him have like this great year with chemistry. But he's been completely unhappy in Cleveland. He's being drafted as the 28th overall wide receiver 12. I'm seeing a lot of things. And with Mike Stefanski there as the head coach, we saw what he did in Minnesota with the wide receivers only got like 201 targets last year. Stephon Diggs was not happy. Right. We saw he left. Yeah, and now you have this two-headed monster, Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, and Stefanski loves running that ball when you have that. We saw with Dalvin Cook. So I'm really you got Jarvis Landry there. We got Njoku there. We have Austin Hooper there. There's a lot of options. And I just don't see Odell having – I see him maybe having like 3 touchdowns this year. So Odell burned me the last 2 years. I am not taking Odell Beckham. He is one guy that I love him because he's on my team, but his name is just preceding him. He had that we were joking about that one catch. The one catch he had that he's been riding his whole career on. And so I am definitely staying away from Odell Beckham there. I was going to talk about Matthew. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, unfortunately for him, it's just like, you're right, that offense rides heavily on the running back, and they have the two-headed running back system there now. You have 2 number ones in that backfield, and Stefanski also loves using the running back in the passing game too. So out of all those targets, a lot of them are going to go to the running backs, and I believe the Vikings offense didn't have more than 400-something pass attempts last season. That's just just like with Todd Gurley in his situation. It's just not a recipe for success.
Yeah, it's Odell's burned me a lot. And then the other guy I was thinking about, I've never had, which goes into my next question about quarterbacks, is Matthew Stafford. I mean, he was playing so well last year, the first couple of weeks, the back injury, and then he's got false COVID. There's just always something going on with this guy, and he can put up the numbers, but I just have zero faith in Matthew Stafford, and I'm not even drafting him as my quarterback 2. I just completely stay away from that guy. I don't want to see that guy on my bench or want to see him on my roster anywhere.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I'm personally taking him just because of just how late he's going, and as a quarterback 2 that can have the upside of being a top 5 quarterback. I believe before his injury he was a QB4 or QB5 or something like that. And just later in the draft, if I want to take a shot, and I like to take risky moves personally, but when you're that late in the draft and you can hit home runs, Matthew Stafford is one of those that can be your home run because you've already seen him perform in that top 5 QB range before. And if he doesn't, then he went so late in the draft, you're not really wasting anything on him. And actually, there's a lot of quarterbacks late in the draft that I actually like Matthew Stafford. So yeah.
So going into my next question here, I want to look at some of the quarterback sleepers, some of the quarterback bust and sleepers. So yeah, who's your quarterback sleeper that's going really late that you think could be your QB1 for the whole season?
I'm thinking about Daniel Jones, actually.
Okay.
I've seen him go as a lot of sleepers and some of the others in the community right now, and I happen to agree. I love taking quarterbacks late just because I love stacking up on the skill position players in general. But in the games that we saw Daniel Jones with at least one healthy receiver, he was doing great. He had multiple touchdown games, and granted, there was a fumble problem. He led the league far and away with the most fumbles, but that generally comes with just being a rookie quarterback, and he didn't even play all the games last season. So I believe with a hopefully healthy Golden Tate, Evan Ingram, or Sterling Shepard, you could definitely see a good floor with him. So I wouldn't be too unhappy if he didn't perform to what I think he could do.
The one thing that scares me about Daniel Jones is looking at that schedule. They have the Steelers, they're at the Bears, then at home against the 49ers, at the Rams, and then at the Cowboys. So I could see them going 0-5 in those first few games. But the good thing about that is they're probably going to be playing from behind. So he's probably, that's what scares me about Saquon a little bit too, that he's going to be throwing the ball a lot more to those guys you just mentioned. So he's really one of those guys that's up in the air for me. I could see him being a boom or bust guy. I'm leaning more towards the bust side with Daniel Jones, just because he, like you said, those 18 fumbles last year, he had some sparks of greatness, very Eli Manning-like. And I mean, they look alike, he's on the Giants.
It's so scary how much they look alike.
It really is wild. And they almost I know Eli didn't have the fumble problem, but again, a lot of touchdowns, a lot of passing yards, but then I got a lot of mistakes as well, 12 interceptions and things. But that Giants defense is weak. So Daniel Jones is one guy. I don't know if I'm going to draft him, but I'm keeping my eye on him. I really like, as a sleeper, Teddy Bridgewater. I know that, he's a new coach. I'm seeing him ranked at quarterback 27. You get the new coach there. He did win those 5 games or 6 games he started with New Orleans last year. He didn't put up huge numbers, but he was a good game manager. But then when Carolina drafted 7 defensive players, they lose Luke Kuechly, so they spent all of their draft picks on the defense there, really shoring up that defense. But they still have you have Christian McCaffrey, which obviously we know he's going number 1 pretty much everywhere.
Who's that?
You have Christian McCaffrey. Yes, have you heard him before? He's pretty good. You got DJ Moore
every now and then.
Here and there. Is he going number 1 in all the drafts you've seen so far?
Yeah, it's either him or Saquon.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm taking McCaffrey no matter what if I have the number 1 pick. Sometimes it's nice to not have that number 1 pick, though, without that stress of like, you take this guy and if he gets hurt or something. I kind of like being in that 4, 5, 6 range there. It's like being at 12 is also hard. But back to Bridgewater, they're going to have a lot of high shootout games with that NFC South offense. With Tom Brady, Drew Brees, and Matt Ryan, obviously, and your Falcons there. So I see Teddy Bridgewater. They have a lot of guys there. Curtis Samuel really hasn't met his peak yet in Carolina. Ian Thomas, I think, has a good chance to be a breakout tight end this year, which we'll get to later. And then they said Robbie Anderson coming down from New York. I think Teddy Bridgewater has a really high upside. I'm not drafting him as my day 1 starter, but I think if I can get him late, he may be a sleeper that could ride me into the end of my season, hoping there is an end to the season and not ending it shortly, cutting it short there.
Yeah, well, cross our fingers.
So one guy I'm saying is a sleeper, and I wanted to get your thoughts on, is Phillip Rivers. He's kind of regressed over the last few years, but I like it now. He's got the best offensive line in the league. You got Taylor and Mack back at that running back. You have tons of receivers there now. They have Pittman and Campbell along with the T.Y. Hilton and good tight ends there. And, he's done well with Frank Wright before, and he's going to be playing in a dome. So weather's not going to be a factor with his older age. Do you see him producing in Indianapolis, or do you want to stay away from Phillip Rivers? I have him as a sleeper.
Yeah, I've viewed him as a sleeper too, just because he's just mostly got seen. He's going undrafted, and he's going to be one of those hot streamer quarterbacks going throughout the season. It's just I have a hard time seeing him finish, at least on the season itself, above like a QB 15. But his situation is good there. He's got the best offensive line he's probably ever had in his career. I believe it's ranked 1 by PFF right now, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. But it's just like, it's not more so of him and his talent and his situation. It's just the amount of quarterbacks that's already, around the league right now. Like, I'm pretty sure there's a set like top 10 already. And then you can argue about the next 5. And it's just like Phillip, I don't think he finishes top 10. I say there's like a possibility he'll finish sometime in the top 15 of like a good situation. But I do like picking up Michael Pittman, actually, because T.Y. Hilton will not play the whole season.
You don't think so?
Nah. He's one of those I've been burned by.
Really, I've been in love with him. He's one of those guys that I've gotten late, and like almost every time I picked him up the last, how many years has he been in the league? Like 10 years now. I usually can get him pretty late. He's not a big touchdown guy, though. He'll get you a lot of yards and everything. But yeah, he's not a super huge touchdown guy, but he's one of the most underrated receivers, I feel like, career-wise. Yeah, he just has had a great career, solid career, but he's just kind of been underrated, playing behind, the Antonio Browns and Julio Joneses, his whole career. It's kind of been overlooked.
Very much like Keenan Allen.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And so Keenan Allen's usually pretty high on those wide receiver lists too. And I'm like, I forgot he even still plays, because sometimes there's so many talented receivers up there. The game has changed to where you can take a receiver. You take a Michael Thomas as your first overall pick and be okay. When I remember years ago, the first 2 rounds, you were only taking running backs. And if you took something else, you were stupid. Now you're taking quarterbacks or sometimes tight ends I've seen people take. But I want to go to the quarterback bust. And you had brought up Robert Woods earlier. Jared Goff is a bust to me. He has just been in his first 26 games with the Bay, he had 54 touchdowns. His next 21 games, he only had 28 touchdowns. That offensive line is horrible. He's lost Gurley. Cooks has been gone for a year now. He's a 25th quarterback under duress right now. I just don't think Jared Goff, I think people are still living in that dream fantasy land where him and Sean McVay can come together as this quarterback coach genius. And I just don't see that happening again.
Yeah, I've honestly, like, other than Woods, I've kind of been avoiding the Rams altogether. Like, other than like Woods and like maybe Higbee, but there's just like a big red flag of whether or not Everett's actually going to come in and interrupt his targets. But as far as Goff, it's like he's going so late. I'm not exactly sure if it's like a bust. But yeah, you're right. The O-line is terrible. They did nothing to help him out. Surprisingly enough, though, he didn't get sacked that much, but that's probably more so they're just getting off the ball so quickly. I mean, they have a Cooper Kupp to just drop it off to. I mean, it's practically having like a pass catching back, right? And it's kind of hard. He's in a tough division. Offensive line is terrible, but he has good pieces around him. He's going so late. It's just kind of like one of those things where just like, I'd just rather just take my chances somewhere else because it's just too many red flags around him.
Absolutely. I'm kind of the same. I'm feeling that way too. I'm Ryan Tannehill. I think last year Tannehill was a complete fluke. I think people were game planning for Marcus Mariota, when they were planning, and then all of a sudden Tannehill comes in, has this great season. But I think he's going to regress to that Tannehill we saw in Miami. I think people are going to realize how to game plan for him now. The teams are going to be better prepared. And I just think that Henry's even going to regress a little. He carried that whole workload at the end of the season. I love Derrick Henry. He got me into like the playoffs and 3 leagues that late push in the season. But I just don't see the Titans being the same as they were last year. And Ryan Tannehill, I see going pretty high. People are really, really loving him. I'm seeing him on both a lot of sleeper lists and a lot of bust lists. And so I'm saying bust. I just don't see Ryan Tannehill sustaining that success for 2 years in a row.
Yeah, same. Just it's one thing to have like sometimes you have a breakout rookie or a surprise, and the general thought is like, hey, does he really have it? Or maybe we just didn't have that much film on him in that offense or that scheme or anything. But now that we have it, it's like we saw what happened in the AFC Championship, on the big game, whenever he had to be put in a position where he had to out throw Patrick Mahomes. It's just not going to happen. And I really think the loss of the right tackle Conklin might be an issue this season. And I get that Derrick Henry is great and all, but we're in a league where you have to actually pass it to win games. Maybe not so much during the regular season as much, but whenever you come in the postseason and you have Lamar might be an exception just because they do it so well, but you have Mahomes and Brady's not there anymore. But you're not going to get past that in the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't even know. I'm trying to see if I see Tennessee even making the playoffs this year. I just think that.
Yeah, I personally don't have them making it.
Yeah, I think the Colts are coming out of that division. I just see the Colts doing well. Yeah, I don't see anyone else taking that division this year. And Baker is kind of one of my guys that I'm kind of the same thing. I think Baker might come out and have a really good year. I think everyone jumped on that Browns bandwagon last year and we disappointed again. They're like, oh, Browns still suck. And I think actually he's trimmed down a lot. He's looking a lot more ripped. I'm probably not taking him because I hate taking my hometown quarterback. Do you ever draft Matt Ryan?
I actually have, but it's kind of like having the luxury of knowing that he's going to be at least decent because he's just been in and out at least a QB 15 and at best QB2 and QB1. So at least I know like I have like a safe floor of him with those 600 passes and the tools of like they always use their tight ends, the running backs are using the passing game, and then of course to be Hall of Famer Julio, right? Yeah. It's just like a safe option. I generally do stay away from that just because I feel like it's like a I'm not superstitious, but I'm a little stitious, that kind of thing. But he's not a bad quarterback to pick up in fantasy. But on Baker, though, he is another one that I'm actually looking to get late. And I get like that offense isn't going to pass that much. But we see with Kirk Cousins, he can have solid fantasy finishes in that kind of offense. And they have a better offensive line entering this year with their new additions, a better head coach. And I don't think anyone's going to argue that at all. But just the fact that they'll be more efficient makes me think that Baker will do. He was being drafted as QB6 last year entering the season. I don't think he'll get that high, but I think you could see a solid to potentially really good quarterback out of Baker Mayfield, especially in fantasy.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. Like I said, Austin Hooper's there now. We saw what he did in Atlanta. And I just think even with Kareem Hunt, it might be a dunk and dink pass to Kareem Hunt for the end zone, so you're still going to get those little touchdown passes. But yeah, I don't like, because if Baker sucks and has 4 interceptions and the Browns lose, I'm like double mad. My fantasy team lost and my real team lost, and so I try to stay away from that. So I'm only like single mad, like, oh, Baker sucked, but look at what Josh Allen did for me today, or whatever. But we talked about tight ends a little bit before. We saw Darren Waller last year kind of come out of nowhere. I actually drafted him in all my leagues because I did a lot of research on the tight end position. Because if you don't get that Kittle, Ertz, Andrews, right up front there, Kelsey, if the tight ends you can find that sleeper in like a Waller. So who's your guy that's going to be the Darren Waller of 2020? The tight end that nobody really knows about is going to have that breakout season.
It's so hard because I feel like there's like a handful going around in the community because we're all just like throwing around these names like Mike Gesicki or Blake Jarwin or Dallas Goedert and even Chris Herndon now, especially like this past 2 weeks from the camp news and everything. I personally think it's Herndon. Between the others, if I'm looking at Mike Gesicki, it's like he's in Miami, and I get he had a good last half of the season, but it's like I'm still not exactly really comfortable with it. And they have Blake Jarwin, and yeah, they did have Witten leave and go to the Raiders, but yeah, I'm not comfortable with that just because it's a new head coach, potentially a new scheme. We don't really know how they're going to run that yet, and there's so many mouths to feed on that offense. And then you have Dallas Goedert, who was splitting with Zach Ertz, and it's like he did have a QB 10, not QB, excuse me, a tight end 10 finish last year. But it's like, you know what? Do I want tight end 10, who's the number 2 tight end on that team? And I get like the receivers on the Eagles don't really last that long. But with Herndon, I get the potentially number 1 receiver of that team, and he already has a good rapport with Sam Darnold, and we saw that in the last year. And I get that kind of like sounded like Mike Gesicki, but I believe Herndon, more so than those other late round tight ends, might be the leader as far as target share in that offense.
Yeah, I think Blake Jarwin is what a lot of people are talking about, and he might be a little overhyped at the position. Like you said, like Witten had him and Witten had 124 combined targets.
Yeah.
So with Witten leading, but like you said, Goddard's going to get some of those, and you have CeeDee Lamb coming in to take some of the. He's going to have more than Randall Cobb had targets over there too. What about Will Disley? I know he had that Achilles injury, put him out for the season, but I see him as tight end 30 right now listed, and so. I just don't see. Will Disley had a great year. Greg Olsen, I don't think is going to be a threat. And if he can stay healthy, he had some really good flashes of being a great tight end 1. What do you think about Disley?
Man, I love that you're bringing up Will Disley because like I had him at the beginning of last year as just one of those waiver wire picks. I was like, I'm just going to grab this guy and just see what happens. And it was just so unfortunate seeing that happen. But I hate to say it, but they did pay Greg Olsen. And I get that, he's older and he's kind of like injury prone at this point, but they paid him a significant amount of money to come be their tight end. And I can't remember who else was the tight end there at the moment, but he had a good, after Will Disley went out. It was Hollister. That's what it was. I remember Abercrombie, Hollister got it. Yeah, it was Hollister. And,
did you say Abercrombie and Hollister?
Yeah, something like that.
That's a good way to remember. All right, go on.
But it's like so you have those 3 tight ends, right? And Will Disley did do great. It's not a pass-heavy offense. We're already expecting a breakout from DK Metcalf, who already kind of did break out last season. And you also have Wilson's favorite target from what we've seen, this Tyler Lockett. And it's like one of those things. It kind of makes me think about Gardner Minshew, which is like, I love Gardner, right? And I think everyone loves Gardner.
You mentioned him on the show. I thought every answer was going to be Gardner for the show. So
I'm controlling myself right now. Gardner first pick, get that button. But it's just like I really want him to perform well, but it's like the situation I just don't like. And with Disley, there's just too many mouths to feed in an offense that isn't going to pass a lot. And the fact that they did sign Greg Olsen, a significant amount of money.
Well, what about, let's talk about Greg Olsen's replacement there, Ian Thomas. I could see he had some flashes of greatness, and I think him and Teddy Bridgewater might, I don't know why, I just feel like this is just like a gut feeling of chemistry. I know he did do a lot of passes to Jared Cook, but it was a different kind of offense too. So I'm seeing Ian Thomas having a breakout season in Carolina.
Yeah, I am too. Yeah, that's another, once again, late round tight ends. You don't exactly need that top 5 tight end that's going early in the drafts. Load up on your skill position players. Take tight ends late because you might end up with that Darren Waller. And if not, then you probably just ended up with a wide receiver 10 or running back 10 for all you know. But yeah, Ian Thomas, I'm all over it. I like taking him late in drafts too.
Yeah, I'm not high on, like, I love Kittle and Kelsey. I think they're great talents, and these guys are doing awesome things. But I just feel like the points they put up is not worth it. Where I can get points from a RB1 or RB2 or wide receiver 1 in those early rounds. Because Kittle and Kelsey go like round 2 sometimes, and I'm like, I think I'd rather have a running back there. So I'm not. say almost with quarterbacks too. You're going to draft like the Lamars, your Mahomes are all going to be drafted really, really high. But I'd rather wait and go grab myself. I got a Josh Allen. I think he's going to regress too, but I'd rather wait and get someone like that who finished quarterback 6th in the later round. So I'm not high in picking tight ends or quarterbacks early on.
Oh yeah, without doubt, same way.
There's a couple guys particular I wanted to ask you about.
Okay.
A couple of them have changed teams here. Well, I guess Gronk has changed teams after a year off, and Gronk is like the talk of the tight end town now because there's 3 tight ends in Tampa. We know Bruce Arians isn't huge on using the tight ends, but he did say the other day that Gronk looks like he's Gronk of 5 or 6 years ago, not Gronk of 2 years ago, healed from those injuries. So what are your thoughts on Gronk? I am just I don't know what to think. Should I draft him? Should I not? I don't know.
It's another one of those that I was having trouble like putting him in my avoid section. But it's just Bell overweighed that so much. But Gronk is going way too high. I think at the moment he was going like a tight end 6 or 7 currently. And it's like, the dude's been out for so long. Bruce Arians doesn't like using tight ends. And I get that you have Tom Brady and you have that, rapport with each other. But it's like Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. And we were expecting Ronald Jones to even come out. And then there also went 2 other tight ends. Like, it almost seemed like they were in like a Bear situation. Like, not as much, but it's like, hey, tight end, come to Tampa. So yeah, I'm avoiding Gronk altogether.
Yeah, I mean, like I've been hearing things like Brady hasn't had like a real off season with these receivers, so maybe he's going to rely on the guy he knows. But Brady is so talented and smart that I don't think he needs a true. I mean, look at what these guys did with Jameis. I'm sure Brady can develop that kind of chemistry as well pretty quickly with them. And I can see Gronk more as that blocking tight end to open up the lanes for Ronald Jones and things. And so I'm thinking Gronk. If I can get him late, I'm going to get him late. But I just think people are too high on him coming back. New system. But who knows? He could burn us both and just come out because he's Gronk. And he can just come out and be like amazing and be like, 12 touchdown Gronk or something insane with Brady. And it would be really cool because we're based in Tampa or Tampa area here. So I do have a little soft spot for the Bucs. So I'm excited to see what they're going to do this season, especially with Gronk. Another guy.
Sorry, but some of the other teams that had like bad O-lines last year, like the Rams, Bears, and Tampa, for instance, right? Using a lot of different kind of tight end sets, right? And I think part of bringing Gronk in, is like I said, is like helping to beef up the O-line and everything. Because the only part that they helped out was their number 1 pick was Tristan Wirfs, but you still need help other than that. I mean, Tampa's needs were O-line and the back part of that defense, and they did address their Wirfs, and they got Winfield, but you still need help on that O-line if you want to, be more efficient, keep Tom Brady up, because he's not getting out of that pocket. Let's just be clear. He's how many rushing yards is he going to get? Like, what's the under over, like 15, 20, something like that?
I would go like -4.
Yeah, I think there you go.
Yeah.
And then he's going to try and get like a QB kneel for like 1 yard. But yeah, it's just, I think it's more of an O-line thing than an actual like pass option. Like maybe a red zone threat. But that's about as all as I really see it with Gronk.
That's why, I think Cameron Brate and OJ Howard, we saw Brate had really good chemistry with Winston, and Howard had really well with Fitzpatrick. And I could see, because everyone's talking about, are we getting rid of OJ Howard? Are they going to trade him? They brought Gronk in. And I could see Brady and OJ Howard kind of having that same chemistry. He's that same big kind of guy as Gronk. He's younger, probably a little bit faster now. So OJ Howard is kind of one of the guys that I might try to pick up late, because there are 3 tight ends there. So I don't see where Brate and Howard, Gronk's getting picked above both of them, and I could see either of them having maybe more touchdowns and more yards this season than Gronk does. He's more of a decoy.
Do you think they should have traded him at the trade deadline last year?
I don't know. Like, I don't think they're going to get enough value from him. I think he's too talented, and I just don't think they've figured out the way to use him yet. I don't think. What were they looking at? Like a 4th round pick or a 3rd round pick for him? And I think I think he's more of a talent than that. I saw him that first year with Fitzpatrick. He did have some injuries and stuff, but I do like OJ Howard. I think you probably pick him up on the waivers. Probably if the slate, like there's so many other tight ends that I wouldn't be opposed to picking him up on waivers. I don't think I'm drafting any of the Tampa tight ends though, because I just don't know what's going on with them. Another guy who changed teams. He's kind of similar to your Todd Gurley, Melvin Gordon. He held out last year. Austin Eckler took over and did a great job for him. Now the Broncos have given him $13.5 million guaranteed. I know they have the other 2 guys, Freeman and Lindsey, in the backfield there, but I don't think you're paying a guy $13.5 million to be not your lead running back. So, what are your thoughts on Melvin Gordon this season?
Confusion mostly, but because it's like I've held Melvin Gordon before, and he's been mostly great. Depending. I mean, you're not going to get a full season out of him just because of how many games. He's just not going to play more than 14, right? But it's like he wasn't a timeshare last year, and from week 5 on, he was I think running back 12, which is fine, but not exactly what you want out of Melvin Gordon. But then you have the fact that they did pay him, and they paid him like a running back 1. But then there's also the fact of like you have this undrafted running back, Philip Lindsay, who's had 2 1,000-yard rushing seasons already, and it's like, why did y'all really need that? I mean, I get that Philip Lindsay isn't like this like a big time, in between the tackles runner or anything, but 2,000-yard rushing seasons from an undrafted player is pretty damn great. And like the way I'm seeing this timeshare going is like somewhere around 60-40, I guess. I think that the most recent word out of camp was that Melvin Gordon was the better pass catcher. But even then, it's like, do I really want to chance that in the 3rd round when I have running backs who I know are guaranteed their share, which is like Connor and Carson, and even one of my favorites, Leonard Fournette.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me what you see about Leonard Fournette there, because same thing. He's a beast. He can have monster games, or he can have an injury. He gets injured a lot, and I was kind of staying away from him this year. I was another guy who's burned me a couple times, but so you like Fournette this year? So was it because Gardner Minshew is his quarterback?
Oh, you know it. Yeah, I love me some Gardner, man. But like realistically, it's like, okay, that defense is going to be atrocious, right? And they're going to be going against the Titans, who have Derrick Henry, which is like, I get it. They're not going to be like in a bunch of like shootout games or whatever, but the Titans should very easily score on Jacksonville, right? And that's just the 3rd best team in there. You have Deshaun Watson with the Texans. Like, I get they don't have Hopkins anymore, but let's not act like, the Jaguars defense is really going to stop Brandon Cooks or Will Fuller, and even David Johnson, who's like a shell of himself. And then you have the Colts, who are my favorites to win that division, the best O-line in the league, going against one of the worst defenses. It's not really a good mix right there. So I think the thing with Jacksonville and Leonard Fournette is that I know he's guaranteed the load, right? And we already saw last year that he had 50-plus catches. And the thing with him is that people are scared off about the whole trade rumors, and even with the addition of Chris Thompson. But Chris Thompson really, he might take away a couple of those targets, but one of the things with Leonard Fournette is he had only 3 rushing touchdowns last year. So one of the things that you would expect is that a positive regression to happen, and that he'll have a couple more. So hopefully the maybe a little less targets in the passing game, offset with the amount of rushing touchdowns he could possibly have. And he finishes 7 last year, and he's going in the 3rd round. Like, what gives? And the trade rumors, so you're telling me that I can get RB7 and he might be traded to a playoff team? Yeah, I want to take my chance on that.
Yeah, that's true too. I don't know. God, you're making me like want to draft him now. Like you just change my opinion on him. Our Mike from Ball Blast Sports I had on last week is actually really high on Chris Thompson. He thinks he's going to do well there. He's played with some of those coaches before and things. So that's one to keep an eye on there. I'm just saying, because it's Minshew mania, and I know that you love everything Minshew.
Part 2.
And I don't know. Are you drafting him first to get that free case of Bud Light?
Man, I'm trying to find a league that's like free, just so I can do it.
I'm sure you can find a few free leagues around Yahoo or something like that. All right, my other guy changed teams, Deandre Hopkins. You know how good he was. Yes. And so I'm seeing projections all over the place, from 80 receptions to 125, anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 yards, everywhere around like the 8 to 9, 10 touchdown range. So I'm really iffy on him being in Arizona. I think there's going to be a great offense. I just don't know if he's going to have the same catches and the same share as he did in Houston. What's your thoughts?
It's one of the other harder ones. It's just the fact of like, he went from an offense where he was guaranteed to load a number one receiver. I believe he's the only one with 150 plus targets for just as many consecutive seasons as he had. And he's going to an offense who already had 100 plus targets to 2 different receivers. So you have that on top of the offseason way it's going right now. New system. He's definitely not going to get 150 plus targets. So that's just not going to happen. He'll definitely be the number one. Like, let's not kid ourselves. He's the number one, right? but you do have Larry Fitzgerald, and you do have Christian Kirk, and Kenyon Drake. Not a people realize this, but he's also pretty good in the passing game too. It's just there's too many mouths to feed. I still think he's the number one there. I just think he's towards wide receiver 10-ish. I personally had him as number 8 in my rankings, but I do see him finishing around that area more so than the top 5.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting during this pandemic, which making fantasy football so interesting. Like we have injured reserve spots now for guys getting coronavirus, and like no preseason and like a very limited off season where I would be really high on DeAndre Hopkins if him and Kyler Murray were working together all summer and having a few preseason games. But yeah, you really with Brady too, changing the teams for these players, you're not going to develop that chemistry that you really are being in the locker rooms, the practice fields and stuff. They're just basically going in it and like, here we go. I know Tom Brady's been like throwing to some guys in some parks and like in some high school stadiums. They were doing some more drills and things like that. But I'm really iffy on guys changing teams this year. I think I'm going to stick more with guys that have been not moving teams as well. The guy you brought up earlier now, I'm seeing like his name's creeping up here and there. Jamieson Crowder. I mean, I'm really weary of any Jets player, but you brought him up earlier. And I mean, what do you think? I'm thinking he's looking to have a pretty good year.
Yeah, I am too. And if it's in standard, I'm kind of not really targeting him. But I think, the standard right now in fantasy football is PPR, right? And if you want a late round receiver, there's going to be a lot of targets. And like I did say that Chris Harden might be the number one in that offense, which still might be true. But if it's not him, it's going to be Jamieson Crowder. I think we've already seen Mims pop up in the injury report, and they lost Robbie Anderson. And there was already a report there with Sam Darnold during that last stretch of the season where they were winning a shit ton of games. So if you want a receiver who's going to get a lot of targets, might not score that much, but kind of like James White, where it just has like a extremely safe floor. And I really like a perennial flex play. And if you have a bye week for one of your main starter receivers, you have a safe floor that it would definitely cover you for that bye week.
Yeah, that's like Crowder. He did have 15 red zone targets last season, but he was really inconsistent week to week. There's a lot of weeks he put up double digits, and the next week he had single digits. But he's the number one receiver on that depth chart, and he's going as late as like round 5, 6, and something. So if you can get a wide receiver 1 on a depth chart in round 6, I don't care. Same with DJ Moore. I got DJ Moore last year in a lot of leagues late, and he had a pretty solid season for being that late in the draft and getting all those catches. So
I'm really talked about Derrick Henry late in the season last year. How about DJ Moore?
Yeah, DJ Moore, but Jamieson Crowder, it's just one of those guys too. Like you see his name on the board, you're not really sure like what's he going to do. But I think Darnold's going to have a better year. Probably not drafting him, but I think like just stat wise, I think he was out for mono for those few weeks. I think he's really poised to move on. Like what was it? Darnold, Allen, and Baker were all in that draft, and I think they're all going to have pretty good years. I think Allen's going to probably progress a little. He had those rushing touchdowns, but now you have Stephon Diggs there. You did bring in Zach Moss too with Devin Singletary, so I think his rushing touchdowns are going to go down a little bit. But yeah, Crowder is a guy I'm high on. He's probably the only New York Jet that I will draft this year.
Oh yeah.
So, is there any other guys you want to talk about, or any more comments you have to make before we get out of here?
We're talking about QB bust, right? And then you just brought up one who I'm kind of fading right now, and that is Josh Allen. He's kind of like I do like Josh Allen. I do like the way he plays. He's a baller. He doesn't mind, getting in the faces of the defense. And it's really the rushing total, right? He already did say, and I know it could be like hearsay or, just camp speak that he wants to rush less, but it's Zach Moss mostly because of Frank Gore not be able to punch it in on the goal line last year. And not even exaggerating, I don't think he had a goal line touchdown last season. Maybe one, I think. But I believe in this whole Zach Moss thing. Immediately after the draft, McDermott came out and said, hey, he's taking over that Frank Gore role, and I want this to be a 50-50, 1-2 punch. So, on top of Josh Allen, I'm also fading Devin Singletary because I think you'll get the better end, better value later in the draft with Moss. And I really think that Moss can really be that guy on the goal line that just punches it in. So you did have Josh Allen previously vulturing all those running back touchdowns that they would normally get. I think Zach Moss is almost an immediate plug-in for those, maybe not like a weekly starter or anything, but I could definitely see him getting those goal line touchdowns. So yeah. I'm avoiding Josh Allen.
It's kind of an interesting year too with these running backs because, like we said, Marlon Mack. Now you have Jonathan Taylor coming in. I'm seeing Mark Ingram very, very low on the running back chart. Where Mark Ingram had a pretty good year last year, and I'm seeing him as low as running back 28 now with the addition of J.K. Dobbins. Lamar does do those goal line ones. You have Devin Singletary, great year last year, but you have Zach Moss right behind him, so he's going to lose some touches and carries. Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb's been great for the last 2 years. So it's really an interesting position, the running back now, where we have so many of these two-headed monsters. You really got to see who's going to get the workload, and then you can get. It was hard to get a good running back in those late rounds the last couple of years because there was only so many running backs. It's really, really interesting how all these teams are having these two-headed monsters now.
You can't go wrong with James White going late in the draft, and might be the number one for all we know.
So what I learned today from you, Josh, is you love Gardner Minshew and you love James White. Those are two things I learned about you today.
Because I feel like it's like it's almost like the first like 5 or 6 rounds are almost like set in stone. They're almost like copy and paste them. Your most of your mocks and your actual drafts and stuff, but you don't necessarily like win most of your leagues in those couple of rounds. Like I get you might just because you might get like the running back who might be going in mid round 2, might finish as a top 10, but you more so lose your leagues in those first couple of rounds rather than win them. But you really win them and taking those like home runs or taking those risks, later in the drafts and stuff. And James White is one of those ones where last year his floor, he averaged 13 fantasy points per game. And you wouldn't think that, just because he was in the Patriots, backfield and that offense just was terrible. But it's very rare that you get a skill position player that provides the floor that he had and where he's going in the draft currently.
All right. Well, I'm going to be on the lookout for James White. And if he burns me, I'm coming back to you. But yeah, he's one of those other guys that people just kind of like, I don't know, people are really iffy on him and things like that. So my last question, I'm going to ask all my guests this season beforehand. Do you draft a kicker and or defense, or do you stream them week to week?
Well, first of all, in most of my leagues, I'm not having any kickers or defenses, but in the ones that do, I go for the better defenses because just because of how low the defenses go, just in general, anyways. Like if I'm looking at defenses right now, I'm targeting Baltimore, who I think might have the number 1 defense this season, and then you also have the Steelers defense, and even the Browns defense is still going to be, hopefully, middle of the road average, right? But kickers is one of those where I kind of just like. Sometimes I don't even start my kicker just because I want to get like if I know if I have a lead going for like Monday night, whatever, and I have the Monday night kicker, sometimes I won't even like start them and I just like immediately drop them and like have like just pick up like a random player off the waiver,
Okay. So you're that confident in your team, you can afford to lose those 3 to 9 points for a kicker?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I'll stream them every week usually if I'll look at like, oh, the Browns are playing, when the Browns are awful and they're playing, the Steelers. We know the Steelers are going to beat the crap out of them. I'm going to pick up the Steelers kicker just because I don't even know who he is right now, but Boswell is still, I don't even know. Mm-hmm. But I know they're going to score a bunch of touchdowns. I'm going to get all those extra points from him. So yeah, and the Browns defense, I like that you said that. The Browns defense, I think, is going to be a lot better this year. I just think don't sleep on the Browns this year. Everyone was high on them last year. And as a Cleveland fan, I can tell you, once everyone jumps in the bandwagon, it's going to suck. And then we're going to be good this year. And everyone's like, oh, I liked them last year. Like, we can't have those bandwagon jumpers here. So, well, tell me a little bit about your podcast. You're in Jonah's podcast. When do you guys give us a little information? When do you play and all that?
Okay, well, I know we're Falcons fans, right? But it's not a Falcons strictly only podcast. We just talk about NFL in general. We just started this off season, so we haven't like a full season, with like an actual like content, But during the off season, we were just doing fun stuff like rankings, list. We even had a tournament with like a trivia tournament of our friends and stuff. That was great. And we do predictions and everything. But our plan for the season is that we're going to have shows every Tuesday and Friday, uploaded every morning. We'll go through our predictions for the week, any news updates that happens. We even throw in those like little games that we had that were just our content, for the off season and stuff. Like I think our biggest ones by ourselves because they're just the most fun to throw at each other. It's like quick and right off the bat and everything. But for the season, you can look at us just doing predictions and bets of each other, that kind of fun stuff.
And you're at JJTalksPod or JJTalksPod on Twitter? Yes. All right. And then you guys would find it there. So, well, I hope that I can join you guys on your show one time this year and we can talk about all these picks and see what we were right on and what we were wrong on.
I haven't already come on. Y'all are free to come on anytime.
Awesome. Well, I love all this collaborating we're doing with everybody in the podcasting verse here. So it's been really fun. So thank you so much for joining me tonight. And don't forget, guys, you go to manscaped.com, use code SC2020 for 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. So thank you, Josh. It is so nice to have you. And tune in next week for The Pick Is In with me, Kristin, Thursday at 8.
No problem. Thank you for having me.